Ibu Khori. Nah, karena beliau berhalangan hari ini, ada kewajiban lain yang mesti diikuti. Jadi TTT kali ini kita mendapatkan kehormatan. Pembicaranya adalah Bapak Kaustup Deshpande dari India. Nah, mengapa saya menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, bukan bahasa Inggris? Karena ternyata Pak Kaustup ini pernah 5 tahun di Indonesia. Dan sekarang beliau sudah kembali ke India, tepatnya sekarang tinggal di kota Pune, India. Nah, tadi dalam perbincangan di awal, saya mengatakan bahwa antara Indonesia dengan India itu have a long history, relation. Ya, jadi seharusnya orang India tidak merasa asing di Indonesia. Ya, karena keterkaitan budaya antara India dan Indonesia telah berlangsung boleh dikatakan sangat lama, ya, mungkin lebih dari 1000 tahun. Ya. Kali ini kita akan membahas tentang driving green, tentang go green. Ya, memang go green ini pembangunan hijau, ya, mungkin ini penafsiran saya. Pembangunan hijau ini menjadi sangat penting kali ini, saat ini, ya, karena memang kita sedang menghadapi era yang kita sebut era antroposen, ya, bahwa kerusakan bumi itu lebih disebabkan karena aktivitas manusia. Ya, jadi upaya bersama untuk mencegah kerusakan yang lebih lanjut itu harus dilakukan secara bersama, tidak boleh melihat latar belakang apapun, karena ini adalah nasib bersama kita nanti di muka bumi, ya, khususnya untuk generasi yang akan datang. Nah, diskusi kali ini insya Allah akan berbicara mengenai topik tersebut dan akan dipandu oleh salah satu fellow kita, fellow CTSS, yaitu Bapak Eka Satya Putra. Nah, jadi kami dari CTSS berharap bahwa kegiatan ini akan bermanfaat bagi kita semua, memberikan wawasan, memberikan pencerahan, dan semoga juga memberikan inspirasi untuk kita berlaku, ya, beraktivitas yang memberikan solusi pada problem, bukan menciptakan kembali problem yang baru. Mungkin dari saya itu saja. Selamat berdiskusi. Sekali lagi terima kasih banyak kepada Pak Kaustup yang sudah berkenan hadir dalam acara ini. Silakan Pak Eka untuk dipandu acara. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Pak Husin, selamat pagi semua dan terima kasih atas kedatangannya di TTT ke-15 hari ini, ya. Dan tadi sudah disampaikan oleh Pak Husin pembicaraan hari ini tentang Go Green. Sebelumnya sedikit riwayat tentang Pak Kaustup Deshpande. Ya, beliau memang sudah di Indonesia 5 tahun dan bulan Juni tahun ini kembali ke India. Dan sedikit info aja bahwa selama 5 tahun saya dan beliau bekerja sama, kalau tidak salah kurang lebih hampir 2 tahun, ya, 2 tahun lebih. Pak KD ini adalah seorang engineer, ya, dari IIT, Indian Institute of Technology. Nanti kalau salah tolong dikoreksi, ya, Pak KD. Kemudian pengalaman beliau adalah 13 tahun di sales and marketing, program management, kemudian proyek-proyek hijau di manufaktur, ya, industri manufaktur. Kemudian selama ini kiprahnya adalah di manufakturnya adalah di otomotif dan aerospace. Kemudian produk-produk yang selama ini beliau tangani itu antara lain adalah lighting atau pencahayaan, lampu dan segala macam, kemudian switches, sensor, wireless, charger, dan macam-macam, ya. Hari ini beliau akan membawakan tentang konversi go green ya. Jadi dari kondisi sekarang, dari kondisi otomotif yang didominasi oleh motor internal combustion engine, motor bakar internal ya. Saya kurang paham juga istilah baku dalam dunia otomotifnya ya. Tapi kurang lebih itu bahasa Inggrisnya adalah ICE, singkatannya internal combustion engine, menjadi EV atau electrical vehicle ya. Saya rasa intro dari saya itu saja. Saya persilakan Pak Kaustup mungkin juga ingin memperkenalkan diri ya. Presentasi dalam bahasa Inggris ya. Mungkin agak kurang lancar kalau bahasa Indonesia, tapi nggak apa-apa, bisa disela ya. Nanti juga bisa saya bantu. Silakan Pak Kaustup.
Terima kasih Pak Eka, terima kasih Pak. Firstly, thank you for inviting and a wonderful initiative from CTSS on the very, very important subject of going green. It is like a subject which is close to everybody's heart, and everybody has to work on it, and everybody needs to be aware. And firstly, I would like to thank Eka for having multiple discussions and having this kind of a script ready for today's discussion. And I will share my screen. I will just like to run through about what's happening on the climate initiatives on the various government levels, on the various country levels, and as a unified organization or unified society, if I have to say so. A moment. Okay. I hope my screen is visible.
Ya Pak, visible Pak.
Yeah. Okay, so today's topic I am trying to discuss on racing towards zero, the untold story of driving green. Recently, there's a book released by an SAE author, Kelly Senecal and Felix Leach, about the same, and it's a very interesting book which is detailing about the various aspects of going green. And incidentally, today's topic is also revolving and discussing the various nuances and challenges which are being posed in this journey, towards this journey. What is also happening is all the OEMs are committed. Sorry for a moment. Yeah. So all the OEMs are, let's say, going committing for going green or going net zero, and there's a declaration in place, and there are exciting times ahead, and definitely a space to watch out for. But if we see, why this is urgent need is climate change is real and is requiring an urgent attention. Almost all of us are, facing the impact, and we have seen the recent turn of events. We have seen floods, we have seen forest fires, we have seen the increased temperatures and whatnot. And the climate is impacting us in a huge, in a very, very harsh way. So what is being impacted? From a McKinsey report, which was published last year, we can see almost all of the industries, all of the individuals are affected in one or the other way. So it's not only limited to a climate change, but it's a complete socio-economic impact which is being created, affecting all the systems which are prevalent on this globe right now. What is also happening is the global average temperatures are expected to increase between 1.5 degrees to 5 degrees Celsius by 2050. What that means is we would have higher temperatures, and due to which higher floods or forest fires and whatnot. Going forward or going further, what is also happening is countries, the people, the individuals, the governments, and the associations are getting in along to have the climate change addressed on a real time and on an urgent basis. There are various initiatives which are driving. In a recently concluded IPCC, which is the International Parliament for Climate Change, explained what is happening and where are we on this status. So if we see here, there were 5 major findings from this report, which says that we can limit the 1.5 degree rise, which was agreed in the 2015 Paris Convention, by 2030. But if we don't take ambitious targets, we would be, by the end of this century, we would have a temperature increase of 4 degrees centigrade, which means there could be higher temperatures globally. There would be higher increase in water levels. Ocean warming will be faster than an average pace, and ocean acidification would be highest level, which is unseen in this in the current times. Going further, it also states about the necessity to have a focus on reducing the GHG emissions from 2020 onwards, and also to reach a net zero GHG emissions by mid-centuries. In order to protect, we envisage and control the global limit warming by 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2100. But what's happening on this part is also interesting to note. Before we go on to the further steps, if we just see in the scenario wise or in a visual wise, who's emitting the maximum CO2 globally. So Asia would be amounting to around 19 billion tons of CO2, which is almost 53% of the global emission. Within Asia, if we see, it would be China, which is almost 9.8 billion tons, contributing to 27%. India, around 6.8%, and Indonesia, around 1.4%. Then is North America, which is almost 6.5 billion tons, with 18% of the global emissions, and Europe, around 17% of the global emissions. And the other countries are falling in the other segments. The figures are a bit dated, though, from 2017. However, gives a visual on how we are placed and where do we need to focus on. As I was referring, the impacts of these climate change, which is urgent and real, we have seen. We have recently seen the floods in Belgium, Germany, and China. We have seen the forest fires in Amazon as well as in Australia. We have seen the hurricanes and tornadoes in America, as well as the increased snowing in America, Canada, and all. And also we have seen the torrid and dry areas across various parts of the globe. So it's not limited to individual or a country, but this is impacting all of us on a real time, on a daily basis. Towards this, there are various sectors which are currently being tracked. So there were around 21. This is a report from the World Resources Institute, which is again a consortium which is working towards the climate change and proposing the advocacy policy, and also working with the various agencies to form the sizable and the measurements, as well as take action towards the climate change. So there were 21 key parameters which were identified to work on, and the impacts are being measured, whether the steps are in the right direction or it's need a course correction or a complete different strategy to adopt. So what is found of those 21 assessment parameters is currently only 2 are in line with the plan toward 2050 emission targets, 2030 and 2050 emission targets, which are basically agriculture for the crop yields, tons per hectares per year, and second being on the ruminant meat consumption, which is kilocalorie per capita per day. These are the only 2 parameters which are currently in sync or in track with the overall 2030-2050 goals, while the other of the 21, other 2 are on track. 13 are in the right direction, but the speed is not in line with what is expected. So that contributes from the power segment, which is basically driving the share of green renewables in the electricity generation, or share of unbeaten coal in the electricity generation, carbon intensity of electricity generation. Then the buildings, which also contribute to the CO2 as well as the other GH greenhouse gases. Then from the industry and transport and agriculture again. So interestingly, in this metric, what is also being seen is the share of EVs in the annual car sales. It is envisaged that it has to grow around 12 times to reach the 2030 targets and 5 times to reach the 2050 targets, whereas it's hardly around 2.6% at this point in time. So still a slow growth rate, but a step in the right direction. Today's topic, we would discuss about the challenges which would be coming up when we say EVs in the overall climate change perspective. Where does it stand? And what could be a possible impact on the other matrices or the other associated ecosystems from the EV perspective. And in addition to this, there are two metrics which are completely in the wrong direction and has to be corrected on a war footing basis. Basically, that's on the forest deforestation. The idea was to reduce the deforestation and have an increased forest layer. However, what is happening is the deforestation is still on an increasing trend, whereas to meet the goals of 2030 and 2050, we would need it to reduce drastically, or we will need forest covers on a expedited basis. Second is also from the agriculture side, which is coming from the emissions from agriculture production. So this is again also on the increasing side. So these are the two impacts, two sectors which we would have to keenly focus. And during my presentation, I would also talk about the deforestation and other requirements from the EV side, and how do we strike a balance between the best of both worlds. Okay. And furthermore, like there are around 5 parameters for which the current data is insufficient. And that's basically from the emissions of the various buildings, and then industry, the carbon intensity in the steel production, and then transport, and then again agriculture. So just to give a glimpse about how the overall things are lined up. So if you see the energy, electricity, and heat is contributing to almost 32% of the overall CO2 levels. 5.9 comes from the energy buildings, 14% is coming from the energy which is required for transportation. That includes the fuel and combustions and all. And then is the international bunker, which is contributing to 2.7%, agriculture to 12%, and other adding up to the 500%. This also includes the other gases, which are a byproduct of the processes, and which also needs to be controlled to have a complete control of the CO2 targets or the climate targets which we have and research for ourselves for 2030, 2050. So coming to the main topic about, if you see on the electric vehicles side, it's definitely a step forward while we are bringing the first most technology back into action again. And there has been an increased focus about how we go about this electrification of the vehicles. This diagram is just elaborating about the various type of technologies when we talk about EV. So petrol, diesel are the conventional one technologies, or the ICE as I was referring. Then we have the plug-in hybrids. Then we have the hydrogen fuel cell and the battery electric. The graph on the right-hand horizontal axis is showing basically the emissions which are coming out of the from the car, or emission from making the product, or emission from generating the electricity. So if you see here, the ICE, the emissions from the car are the maximum, which is 105 grams of CO2 per square kilometer. And for making the car itself is also 20 grams of CO2 per square kilometer. For sure, in battery electric or in the hydrogen fuel cell, the amount of emitting emissions are dropped. But however, at this juncture, we are unclear about its impact. What would be from making the electricity or making the vehicles is not known. A few salient points, if we have to see, is basically around 5.4% of the cars sold in 2020 were battery electric. The data which is available right now is from the EU side, and EU being one of the most aggressive association in pursuing the EV and the targets which they are envisaging for themselves, which every association can follow or benchmark to, is definitely encouraging in terms of the EV growth, as well as in terms of the adoption of technologies and related aspects of that. In addition to that, the BP Energy Outlook published in January 2018 projected that by 2040, about 300 million of electric vehicles of the world would account for about 30% passenger vehicle kilometers and 15% of truck kilometers. Furthermore, from the data which is released by the IEA in 2017, it talks about 280 million electric vehicles. And based on the new policies, it could be furthermore faster, the adoption of EVs, and the numbers could be higher side. If we see the overall plans, there are promotion schemes about the electric vehicle initiatives in the various regions of the world, wherein currently the majority is from the US side, which is almost 39%, then followed by Japan, which is 16%, and 12% is from the China side. This is basically on the EVI side, EV stock in the EVI promoting countries. The data is coming from the IEA. If you have to see from the ASEAN, there have been declarations from the top 6 countries of the ASEAN conglomerate or ASEAN association, basically from Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines. The initiatives are talking about EV, and basically Malaysia are talking about being target ready of 125,000 EVs charging station by 2030. It has also committed to reduce the carbon emissions from vehicle by improving the fuel economy levels by 2025. Singapore has made a provision of a budget for the EV, phasing out the internal combustion engines by 2040. So there's a provision and the commitment coming from the government side. It has also committed almost $30 million over the next 3 years for EV related infrastructure to be proposed and propagated. Thailand is trying to be a hub of production of the EVs and attracting many incentives and schemes for EV manufacturing as well as EV promotions. In Indonesia, there's a target of 1% of the vehicles to be electric by 2025. Indonesia is also more working towards the ecosystem about the EV, the battery production in particular, considering the reserves it has for the nickel. There's a homegrown company in Vietnam called VinFast, which is lining up the various EV models, and it would be, bringing it to the market and creating the infrastructure related to the EV. And Philippines, right now the policy is unclear, but there are talks which I understand, and they would be looking forward for EV adoption as well. The point here I'm trying to make is there is a lot of excitement about EVs, what is going to happen, how is going to happen, bringing in new investments, new technologies, and also an avenue of creating many job creations, as well as a complete disruption of how we see the transport segment in general. All the OEMs are going in a big way. let's say by VW committing of almost 60% of its fleet, either be PHV, BEV, or FCV by 2030. Fiat or Stellantis of 100% by 2030. Renault 65% by 2025 and 90% by 2030. So if we see from the OEM perspectives also, there are ambitious plans of having the EVs on road at a very, very fast speed, at a breakneck speed. But what's happening on this is, let's say we just need to ponder over a bit. This is an interesting analysis which I found over the web, which says, let's say for an EV, battery energy density would be almost 200 watt per kg. The battery capacity would be, say, around 100 kilowatts. So EV mileage would be, say, 30 kilowatt per 100 miles, which is 5.33 kilometers per kilowatt hour. If we compare a similar gasoline car detail, what is coming out is, for this against this 5.33, what is required is around 1.68. So at this juncture, what it appears is the gasolines are more effective as compared to the EV. What also draws to a point is, to carry that kind of a weight, it would be 61 times. So basically the size of the vehicle increases, so will the weight of the battery pack increase. The battery will simply cannot deliver 100 kilowatt because that power would be wasted trying to overcome the weight and contents of the vehicle. So the more power or the more kilometers we try to add to the vehicle would add to the weight, and thereby it would add to the battery capacity. So what is also equally important is about the charging infrastructure and having the efficiencies maintained, having the effectiveness maintained, and the ICEs could be popular because there were petrol pumps or the solar pumps available where the refueling was possible. In a similar way, for EVs to progress at a faster rate, the EV infrastructure would be of most importance. But while we do so, what is also equally important is to see how the energy which is generated is catered to. In today's world, around 38% of the energy generated is from the coal side, right? We'll come to that subsequently. But if you see this emission graph here, electric car emissions by country, grams per CO2 kilometer. So that gives a slight idea about where the coal-based is, where the nuclear-based is, where the other types of energies are being used. So most of the markets where the population would be driving or the EV growth would be happening is dependent on coal-based kind of power generation. So while we say EVs will reduce the emission to a certain extent, but the added requirement of the power and the demand would fuel the necessity of having the mechanisms or the resources support the power production. So what is going to happen, or what we envisage here is, so while we see a EV as a growth, what is going to also happen is there is going to be a race for minerals. There is going to be race for new mines, which will in turn lead to the deforestation or also increased gases or the GHG emissions and all. See, right now for the fossil fuels, say for oils or natural gas, it was limited to, say, United States, Saudi Arabia, Russia, and few other countries with some reserves around. Before we go that, if you see here, for the electric car, the requirement of minerals, the different kinds of minerals is going to increase as compared to the conventional car, because few of the materials would be going in the battery technology or the storing of the charge and electricity and powering the vehicle and all. So as and when the demand increases, this requirement is also going to go up. Furthermore, if we go towards the renewable source energy, produce that kind of energy and to have those technologies working to the effectiveness and the efficiencies what is planned, there will be also increased requirement of the minerals. So EV right now may be a hype word and everybody is going to go about it, but we need to watch out what is the impact it is going to create in terms of the various minerals, various resources for which we would need deforestation or improve land masses, increase availability and all. So as I was saying, for nickel, like which is a predominant material which will go in the EVs for the battery technology, as well as cobalt. So Indonesia, which is controlling more than 25% of the global reserves, surely new mines, new resources, new smelters will come up. So it would add to the current infrastructure what is available and also add to the CO2 emissions. So it is not only limited to EV when we say, we also need to see what are the emissions and how those are going to be controlled with added infrastructure and all. So what we also need to understand and see is, while we are creating a solution for one problem, we should not create another problem which is further more difficult to solve. The graph here is showing the deforestation rate at various due to various reasons, say being forestry or commodities or urbanization or for the want of minerals, which is again going on an increased trend, which we saw in the previous graph as well. So again, what I was trying to bring is to the notice is the mineral supplies for the electric cars must increase 30-fold to meet climate goals. Then the requirement of the new minerals as well as increased mineral requirements is going to create a lot many challenges for the overall, the ecosystem or as well as ecosystems basically, and also could have a socio-climatic impact on the associated things. One report which was published by the UNCTAD, part of the UN, it says that developing countries pay environmental cost for electrical battery. So batteries will definitely, it will create a lot many exciting opportunities, but we also have to be cautious and cognizant about the fact that how do we dispose the battery? When we created the plastic, when the society as large created a plastic, upbeat about the problems it could solve, it could replace metals and many, many more things. But today at hand, we have a larger issue about dealing with the plastic. Though it has been used as a landfill, it has been used in many, many aspects. It has created a pollution and we are paying a price for that. So it has to be, kind of a known approach or a weighted approach where we are clear about what problem we are solving and what other problem we are creating, so that we are able to transform in a complete way and ensure that we meet the targets of 2030, 2050. Targets are not for you or me, basically. It's basically for the next generation, what we are coming. So just to summarize what we have been speaking, in the racing towards zero, we need to explore the issues which are inherent in developing the sustainable transportation. We also need to review the types of propulsion system, the vehicle options, discuss the low carbon fuels and alternative energy resources, and examine the role of regulations in curbing emissions. It's not only OEM's responsibility or the regulatory body's responsibility. It's a collective responsibility of all of us to see the efficacy and the efficiency of the vehicles on road. All the technologies have an impact on their environment, from internal combustion engines to battery vehicle, electric vehicles, fuel cells, or electric vehicles and hybrids. The bad news is there's no silver bullet which will be able to solve a problem overnight. The battery electric currently may be the obvious path to a sustainable carbon-free transportation future, but it's not the only, nor necessarily the best path forward. The vast majority of vehicles today use internal combustion engine, and it will continue to do so for a certain period of time. Improving the ICE and the fuels and entering an IC age must be a main route on the road to zero emissions. So the problem or the question still remains is, how do we go green? The future requires a balanced approach to transportation. It's not a matter of choosing between combustion and electrification. It's basically combustion and electrification. As the book author, Mr. Kelly Senecal says, the future is electric. By harnessing the best, we will be able to address our transportation problems quickly. What I here trying to propose is a philosophy called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We need to see a problem, which means Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam means we are a family. It's not basically India or Indonesia or China or something. It's basically a world as a family. And this family is having a problem of the climate change, which is impacting each and every one of us. So as a family, we have to see the problem and take countermeasures to correct that and see what we leave for the future generations to come. So Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means we are a family, can be an underlying principle, underlying and the guiding principle of going green initiative to achieve a balanced, sustainable, and just conversion. Just means is just and equal means who's using that and accordingly have that kind of trading kind of trade-off, or basically, if I have to say, like who uses it and how have the countermeasures of that use as a just conversion. So just to elaborate about this philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So this is basically a guiding, this first appeared in the Rig Vedas long back, multiple years back, basically meaning that one is relative, the other is stranger, is a pity problem. We have to grow from this problem and be detached and have the audacity to see the entire world as one family. And this family can transform and take steps to solve this problem collectively so that it impacts and it creates a better future for the generations to come. Few things which I think can be a actionable plan is basically the current provisions of the NDCs, which are the nationally determined contributions, where encompassing only the certain gases. The target boundary could be increased to all the gases and their assess the impacts on the various fields. The mitigation contributions could also be divided further into the greenhouse gas targets, non-GHG targets, policies and actions, and then have it further detailed about the base year fixed level targets, baseline scenario targets, intensity targets, and trajectory targets. A small video of what we say. This is again coming from the WRI. Sorry, Pa.
Companies have been making a lot of promises lately.
We're going to reduce our carbon footprint to net zero.
Unilever is committing to net zero emissions.
We can achieve a net zero emissions world.
But what does net
Some challenge. Okay. Okay. So as a overall thought process for what we can do to have the transformation achieved by 2025, we can call it, say, Act 2025. What we can do is amplify and leverage the voices of vulnerable to effectively influence decisions, foster collaborations and renewed sense of solidarity and trust among the stakeholders needed to achieve the ambitious climate goals, identify areas of convergence and facilitate negotiating breakthroughs. Then we can promote the negotiated outcomes at the UN climate summits that are clear, ambitious, equitable, and balanced, while holding countries accountable for their climate commitments under the Paris Agreement. First and foremost thing which the industry and academia can work together is to have enhanced the awareness and mobilize capacity on ways to pursue the implementation of the Paris Agreement and relevant COP decisions, even given the economic challenges caused by COVID-19 pandemic. I must appreciate CTSS initiative. I think this is a right step and step forward in this direction. Further, we can strengthen the existing coalitions and empower the new and emerging ones that gather progressive countries and stakeholders, and promote a shared prosperity narrative and a vision for collective future that is ultimately safer, prosperous, low carbon, and climate resilient. So I would just conclude my presentation with a small video which was created by the Tata Group in India. It's a 3-minute video, but it would definitely give a insight about what I'm trying to hint out is.
Hi, come on in, have a seat. So good morning, everyone. When's the last time any of you drew a picture?
Last time.
Today, we're here to draw a picture. So what you'll see here are some crayons, colors in each box. Choose your colors wisely because there will be another group coming in after you and making another picture with what you leave behind. So here we have the other group.
Everybody say hi.
Why don't we show the kids the pictures that we've drawn?
Yeah, sure. Bye.
So nice.
Wow. Yes.
Why don't you show them what you drew?
It's all black. We all took away the bright colors.
I wish I wasn't this selfish, taking away all the bright colors.
Maybe we could have broken the colors and left half of them for them and for the next group.
So thank you for the patient listening, and I'm open to questions and discussion. Over to you, Paika.
Okay, thank you, Pak Konstup. So currently, there is one question, but hopefully I'm hopeful that the other question will come, but maybe we'll try something, Pak KD. So I think there is a lot of information in your presentation, but let me make a nutshell, so like a big, how to say, the main points of your presentation, and maybe the others can have a idea of what will be their question. So what I get from your presentation is basically go green is okay, understandable, but we must think in the process of going green, we do not make another problem that either currently or in the future that negates our effort to being green.
True.
And if we talk specifically about EV, especially BEV, battery electric vehicle, I just know that they are not as effective as the gasoline car. You mentioned that how many? There are
61 times. 1.63 and 5.33. So
1.63 and 5.33. Can you elaborate more? What does this value means, or this number means?
Okay. So what it means is, do you want me to present that screen for the benefit
Okay,
of the...
if possible.
Just a moment. Just a moment, Pa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what it basically means is, if you see the average mileage in kilometers per kilowatt hour, the gasoline car is able to travel or carry the same kind of load with a lesser fuel, but for the battery, it would consume more. If I have to elaborate further, I'll just explain it here.
Maybe like this. So correct me if I'm wrong. So it means that for the same amount of length or mileage, the electric car needs more energy compared to...
Okay, so let me explain it like this, Paika. To deliver 100 kilowatt of energy, it needs only 8.2 kilos of gasoline. Okay, kilowatt hour is basically a unit which you will be able to measure the energy. Kilowatt is the energy, and hour, kilowatt hour kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Whereas a battery pack, you would need almost a 500 kilo battery,
okay,
which is almost 61 times more the weight. Now, if we see, or if we just extrapolate this analogy to a lorry or a truck, and with all the chassis weights and also the load and which will carry and all, we can imagine what kind of tonnage or the additional weight it would be requiring to carry that kind of load. So basically, the equilibrium has to be defined. What suits, or what problem statements could be addressed by EV, what problem statements could be addressed by ICE. It cannot be one size fits all kind of a solution. And what could be the optimum way to have the benefit, or if we have to say the total cost of ownership, as well as the impact it would create on the climate and the society at large.
Okay, I understand. So, but there's a battery thing, like you mentioned, is an equilibrium, and it is like circular thing, right? Because if you want to get more power from the battery, you have to invest
more
bigger
onto
battery, yes, more weight and so on, unless we have a new technology that gives a lighter battery with more power.
True.
And that is not appearing right now. Currently, we don't have that. Okay.
Yeah. It also is equally important to note, Paika, is that when we are talking about the battery, it is going to require new materials. For new materials, we will require new mines, which will again call for, land clearance, the deforestation,
and so on,
related things.
Yeah.
So how do we have a equilibrium or a balance achieved is a concern or a challenge which is at hand.
So like you mentioned that there is no silver bullet, and going green with only EV is not the correct solution.
True, Pa.
Yeah, so, it's not a just, wise and correct solution.
See, from an economic point of view, it is bringing trillions of dollars into the economy. So it's something people will not say no, but what is the impact it is going to create on the climate is to be ascertained first, because that impact and that cost is going to be much more severe than the business it creates or the GDPs it grows or benefit it gives to the individuals or the corporations and societies at large.
That is where that your philosophy comes in place. That we remember that we are family.
We are a family.
Yeah.
It's not that Indonesia is impacted, so there's no impact on India. It's not like that. It's one. We all are impacted. How and what is the impact is to be seen, and it unfolds over a period of time. You and me cannot predict at this point in time.
Yeah. And you elaborate that in that last video.
Yes.
The older one takes all the colorful pencil and crayon, so the kids doesn't have anything, only black.
True.
Okay. Yes, yeah, I understand. So, okay, hopefully with this small discussion that will trigger some more curiosity. Well, I will read the first question from Pak Muhaimin, University of Lampung. So it says less emission means high tech, and it is related with high cost of the unit production. Would you have strategic plan to reduce the main problem? Thank you. So can you answer maybe or give some idea?
Sure, Pap. So emission can also be controlled if we have, let's say, like a blended fuel, let's say like ethanol blended fuel or those kind of fuels which will help to, have a phase towards the EV or battery electrification, but which reduces the oil consumptions or the crude oil consumptions, considering the blending is done. But it also creates a forest cover. So it could be midway impacting both scenarios or best of both worlds and still continue to do so. It is also possible because considering the size which is available or the vehicles which are already on road, which are ICE, can be fine-tuned to have accommodate these kind of near fuel technologies or combustion technologies. So that can be, a win-win situation for both things, and we can assess what kind of benefit it creates in this perspective. So it will depend from OEM to OEM to country to country, how it could be less emission from only a transportation perspective.
Okay. So while we are waiting, we have, I think, another 30 minutes. While we wait, maybe the other is trying to figure out the question. But that you mentioned, it will differ from OEM to OEM. And I think this shows in that Japan is leaning more towards
Hybrid.
Hybrid, right? Hybrid and fuel cell.
Yes.
Rather than electric.
True.
So is this what you mean by it will differ?
Yes, because it has to be associated with the entire infrastructure and the ecosystem to support that kind of a growth, as well as to support that kind of the requirement. It will also determine what kind of technologies go into the market, and the best way is to use a public transport, but that does not sound good for the OEMs, considering the revenues are not coming from the vehicle, but from the public transport.
Yeah.
It's said, in developed countries, the people use public transport compared to a personal transport, because that is so much developed and thought through, so that the need of personal transport is reduced, considering the availability of private transport, which is a good way for reducing the emissions. It is carrying more load at a relatively less consumption and much more manageable.
Yeah, I think the OEM is also making some equilibrium. Yeah, okay, in developed country they are concentrating on the public transportation, but they also need to live and grow. So I don't know what they are doing in the developing country. Yeah,
true.
I think I get your point. So everything comes to a balance, again, comes to an equilibrium. And to move as a collective, to move, become more green, it must be a collective movement.
It has to be a collective move. It has to be. Because even we have big things at the top, big advocacy policies or big strategic plans, unless the individual is empowered and made aware about his actions are impacting the globe or the climate, won't be able to achieve the transformation. So it has to be made aware, it has to be taught, and then as a collective society, we have to work towards the transformation in real sense.
Okay, understood. So maybe give me some time to explain in Bahasa. Maybe the other viewer will be more comfortable. So you also understand Bahasa. And if I'm wrong, just step in and correct me.
Sure, Pak.
Oke, jadi sedikit penjelasan ya bahwa apa yang disampaikan oleh Pak KD itu memang go green itu kalau kita lihat konsentrasi kepada transport ya, go green itu tidak identik dengan berarti semua itu harus electric vehicle ya, bahwa itu jadi dari ICE internal combustion engine menjadi yang mengeluarkan banyak greenhouse gas gitu menjadi elektrik itu bukan satu-satunya cara ya, karena tadi disebutkan juga bahwa ICE itu lebih efektif ya, jadi membawa bahan bakar hanya sekian kilo dibandingin dengan yang sekarang EV adalah 500 kilo, jadi 61 kali lebih besar ya. Dan di situ adalah permasalahannya kalau kita mau menambah efektifnya si mobil listrik ini, berarti kita harus membuat baterai yang lebih dengan kapasitas lebih besar, dan dengan teknologi yang sekarang itu berarti lebih berat, dan belum tentang bagaimana membuatnya, mengambil mineralnya, terjadi deforestasi dan segala macam. Jadi go green hanya dengan bermodalkan EV ya di sektor transportasi itu bukan suatu alasan bukan suatu cara pandang yang bijak lah, yang saya tangkap seperti itu ya. Dan mungkin para pemirsa, pendengar juga kalau ada ya, saya harapkan lebih paham bahwa go green dalam hal transportasi itu sebenarnya banyak ya. Alternatifnya banyak, seperti Pak Kostu bilang, itu juga tergantung OEM masing-masing ya. Dan saya sebutkan bahwa Jepang memang lebih condong kepada fuel cell ya, daripada kepada elektrik. Nah, mungkin mereka punya alasan, mereka berpikir kalau membuat baterai ya tadi, seperti tadi, berarti kita harus mining lagi, nggak tahu nanti efeknya gimana ke lingkungan dan segala macam ya. Suatu sebenarnya menarik ya menurut saya. Jadi menjadi green tidaklah semudah yang kita bayangkan. Kita harus bisa memahami masalah yang ada sekarang dan potensi masalah yang akan kita timbulkan dengan solusi yang kita pikirkan sekarang, dan juga bagaimana membuat potensi itu tidak menjadi sesuatu hal yang negatif ya. Potensi masalah tentunya ya. Jangan sampai itu menjadi masalah, kita berbuat begini sekarang malah masa depannya akan lebih parah lagi. Seperti tadi Pak Kostup juga bilang tentang dulu orang berpikir oh kita gantikan logam dengan plastik ya. Tapi sekarang plastik ada di mana-mana, mikroplastik ada di mana-mana ya, yang mengancam kesehatan kita semua. Dan untuk itu secara sebagai underlying principle-nya ya, tadi disebut, saya nggak bisa nyebutkan ya bahasa Hindi ya, tapi intinya adalah bahwa kita tuh semua satu keluarga ya. Kurang lebih seperti itu. Jadi saya persilahkan nih kalau masih ada pertanyaan yang tertarik. Ya, saya dapat informasi bahwa sesi ini akan berlangsung sampai 11.30, jadi kurang lebih 20 menit lagi kita masih punya waktu ya. Yang mau bertanya langsung juga dipersilahkan. Ya mungkin karena tadi presentasinya, informasinya banyak ya, banyak dan cukup rumit. Jadi tidak perlu waktu lah untuk mencernanya semua itu. Ya mungkin Pak Kostup kita bisa ngobrol dulu berbahasa Indonesia kalau gitu ya. Kira-kira kalau dari pengalaman Pak Kostup sendiri tentang presentasi tadi ya. Oke, tadi udah ada beberapa solusi ya. Mungkin bisa disebutkan solusi, direkap aja Pak, di ringkas gitu, yang terakhir tuh kira-kira gimana? Sebenarnya kan kita tahu nih ternyata go green itu bukan hanya EV itu bukan hanya elektrik ya. Banyak hal yang harus kita pertimbangkan terhadap lingkungan, terhadap segala macam. Tapi mungkin para pendengar, pemirsa ingin tahu, oke, masalahnya rumit, kompleks, tapi kira-kira put it simply ya, secara sederhana. Jadi sebenarnya apa sih yang harus kita lakukan? Dicoba bahasa Indonesia Pak ya.
Benar ya Pak, betul.
Ya silakan Pak, kira-kira sebenarnya secara praktis itu yang Pak Kostup bawakan untuk solusinya itu sebenarnya apa Pak? Tadi ya, Pak, dari video itu terakhir ada ya tentang kereta api yang jalan,
ya.
tahap ini, tahap ini. Ya.
Saya bukain, tunggu ya Pak, minta maaf.
Ya.
Sudah bisa lihat Pak?
Ya, bisa lihat Pak.
Ya.
Bisa Pak.
Oke, ini dulu. Ini maksudnya gimana nih?
Ya, saya pause ya. Ya. So, ini Pak, cover semua greenhouses dan semua sektor-sektornya.
Ya.
Pertama ya.
Cover ini artinya gimana nih Pak?
Itu artinya ini Pak, belum pas CO2 saja. Methane, ada CFC, HFC, dari AC aircon juga itu hitungin ya.
Oh, semua dimasukkan
semua.
ya.
Ya, semua dimasukkan.
Semua dipertimbangkan bagaimana cara menguranginya.
Benar ya, Pak.
Oke. Berikutnya.
CO2, methane-nya, CFC-nya, semua bisa hitungin. Dan dari di mana, Pak? Itu dari industri atau di transportasi atau di building-buildingnya atau agriculture-nya, semua bisa hitung.
Seperti presentasi di awal tadi ya, ada agrikultur, bangunan, building, bangunan, dan segala macam, transport dan segala macam ya. Oke.
Benar ya, Pak.
Ya.
Itu ini pertama ya.
Ini mungkin setiap negara beda ya, Pak ya.
Ya,
jadi
itu
harusnya
setiap negara bisa beda, tapi bisa ini Pak, konsorsium dan bisa berbicaranya bagaimana, itu negaranya bagaimana, ini negaranya bagaimana, dan seperti ada target-targetnya ini Pak, dan bisa reviewnya seperti target dan plan-nya.
Ya,
tapi,
berarti harusnya setiap negara mulai dari data mereka sendiri ya.
Pertama bisa mulai sendiri, nanti semua bisa hitungkan dan nanti bisa lihat itu apa, itu kurang, itu banyak, tapi bisa cocoknya, bisa bikin cocok nanti ya.
Oke, lanjut Pak.
Ya.
Ini cukup jelas lah kalau ini. Berdasarkan yang tadi semua targetnya adalah 2050 atau lebih awal, semua itu harus net zero ya.
Ya. Pertama
net zero ini,
net zero ya. Pertama bikin net zero ya Pak. CO2 emission pertama net zero. Dan bisa bikin dikurangin ya Pak. Karena CO2 itu ada positifnya. Itu harus 1,5 degree-nya di atas, temperature 1,5 degree-nya atas, seperti ini Pak. Tapi pertama bikin zero dan kurangin ya.
Net zero ini berarti mungkin tetap ada yang menghasilkan greenhouse ini, tapi entah gimana caranya ada juga yang mengurangi gitu kan, kurang lebih pengertiannya ya.
Yap.
Oke. Ya.
Ini Pak, seperti ada target-targetnya, bisa bikin sendiri dan negara-negaranya dan semua konsorsium atau coalition semua sama, bisa hitungin dan ada direksi dan action.
Direction dan action ya, jadi ada arahan dan tindakan bagaimana mengurangi tersebut, emisi tersebut. Ya. Nah, ini maksudnya gimana nih?
Ini Pak, ada carbon offset-nya. Karena satu negara bisa banyak emisi dari CO2, tapi belum ada cover-covernya, deforestation-nya atau forest cover-nya. Tapi itu bisa trading-nya, carbon trading, seperti carbon trading Pak. Tapi ini limit-nya atau nanti tutup ya, di offset. Seperti ini Pak. Ada informasi dari sini Pak, di World Resources Institute dan desain dari net zero ya Pak.
Oke. Jadi ini adalah kurang lebih pendekatan umumnya ya, secara umum bagaimana bisa menuju net zero. Dan tadi di presentasi Pak Kostup juga mengatakan transport itu 14% ya, penyumbang ya 14%. Jadi sisanya mesti dipikirin juga ya, bukan hanya transport saja.
Transportasi ada sedikit persentasenya, nanti banyak sektornya.
Terutama di industri tadi ya?
Ya, industrinya banyak. Industri juga ada, agriculture juga ada.
Oke. Ya, masih kami tunggu nih kalau ada pertanyaan, semoga bisa lebih jelas ya tentang sebenarnya apa yang dipaparkan atau dimaksudkan untuk disampaikan kepada semua tentang Go Green ini. Sementara menunggu, saya dapat kabar ini berhubung Pak Husin mempunyai tugas lebih lanjut, jadi nanti saya yang akan menutup. Mau bertanya langsung silahkan ya. Masih ada waktu 12 menit. Bagaimana? Ada yang tertarik untuk bertanya ataupun kalau ada yang kurang jelas, silakan, akan saya usahakan supaya menjadi lebih jelas, bantu, atau Pak Kostup sendiri mau jelaskan. Sebentar Pak Kostup ya, kita tunggu
Pak,
mungkin semua orang perlu waktu untuk memproses informasi ya.
Tidak apa-apa Pak.
Ya. Jadi sambil menunggu ya, kalau ada yang tertarik ini sedikit cerita aja dulu. Saya dan Pak Kostup sempat bekerja sama ketika beliau ada di Indonesia selama kurang lebih 2 tahun ya, 2 tahun plus ya kalau dihitung dengan awal bertemu ya, dengan mulai saat resmi bekerja sama itu ada jeda waktu soalnya. Karena itu disitulah kami saling mengenal satu sama lain. Nah, kemudian ketika beliau selesai dengan penugasan di Indonesia, kembali bulan Juni tahun ini kita masih tetap berhubungan, dan ketika CTSS ingin mengangkat Go Green, saya mengusulkan bagaimana kalau kita ada dari TTT dari praktisi di industri ya, manufaktur. Ya. Saya ajukan Pak Kostup ini karena memang beliau dan saya terbiasa berkecimpung di dunia praktisi ya, yang kita bekerja istilahnya ya setiap bulan harus hitung-hitungan ya, untung atau rugi. Gimana caranya untung tapi juga hijau gitu. Ada,
Pak Eka,
ya silakan.
Pak Eka, saya mohon maaf, ini saya baru join karena barusan harus ngisi ada summer course. Iya, tapi jadi saya sama sekali tidak mendengar penjelasan Pak Kostup ya, sama sekali tidak mendengar. Tapi karena Pak Eka tadi menyebut soal green itu dengan industri, nah ini kan ada namanya modern ekologi itu ya. Nah saya ingin tahu ya, jadinya mungkin sebetulnya sudah tadi Pak Kostup ya, apakah memang bisa ya dicombine green ini dengan industri. Sementara industri kan seperti Pak Eka katakan itu memang ininya kan harus untung ya, harus cari untung gitu ya. Apakah memang atau misalnya green ini jadinya jadi bisnis baru begitu? Apakah ada harapan memang truly green gitu ya? Kalau memang is it truly green or is it just a kind of
a shade of green,
instrument to get a more benefit, using a green gitu. Nah ini pertanyaan saya. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih Pak.
Terima kasih Pak Rilu. Silakan Pak Kostup.
Firstly, thank you, Parulus, and pleasure to meet you here. Your question is truly valid. So, what exactly is green is the true question, Park. So, it's only EV or it's go green, just a buzzword, or it's something really we wish to do to go green. It's not for you or me. It's basically for the future generation to come, what we leave for them. So it's a all responsibility. It's an individual's responsibility. It's a societal responsibility. It's industry responsibility, and also the government responsibility to ensure that the generations which are going to come after us get a greener future. Towards that, we have to collectively work, as I said in my presentation about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that we are one keluarga, satu keluarga. And how that is going to happen is something we really need to work towards. So, see, green is definitely a thing which has requiring an urgent attention. We have seen the climate changes. We have seen the floods in Germany, Belgium, and China. We are seeing the forest fires in Australia and in Amazon and whatnot. We have also seen the rising water levels in Indonesia. So it's not you and me who are untouched from this impact. So definitely, Parulus, each and every individual, each and every society, and for that matter, industry has to contribute and come up with innovative ideas. But in the rush towards going green, we should not create a problem which is more severe to solve than what current state is. So it should not damage the current ecosystems part. Right. So just not limiting to the buzzword, but bringing it to the action. So what I feel is what CTSS is doing from a Go Green initiative, bringing the industry and academia together and really focusing towards this transformation is the right step forward. And definitely, the more awareness we bring through various mechanisms, through various channels, more solutions we would have to offer from and see what could be their impact. And we will also have to see how these solutions could be given that leverage and bring to the notice of the true decision makers so that it is impacting the society at large.
So, Pak Eka, can I respond, Pak Eka?
Oh, sure, Pak. Please, silakan, Pak.
Okay. So first, thank you very much for your explanation. I'm really happy, if the industrialists have this awareness that the industry also play a very important role in promoting green, because in the previous, for example, almost we experienced this industry conducted destroy the environment, even the use of charcoal, for example, charcoal, coal, using that for industry, for example, really, and also the the fuel, also by using that, actually the running of industry in the long time ago, or maybe I hope it was a long time ago, but I really appreciate if this awareness that the industrialists can also really play important role in promoting the green. That's a good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you, Pak.
Ya, sedikit menambahkan komen untuk Pak Rilus ya. Kalau menurut opini saya, Pak ya, itu memang sebenarnya semuanya harus transform, Pak. Baik konsumen maupun pihak industri. Kalau enggak ya nggak akan berhasil gitu. Kalau industri tetap ngotot dengan ICE ya walam-walam lah gitu ya. Jadi kalau pertanyaan Bapak adalah tentang apakah benar Go Green ataukah hanya buzzword, saya juga nggak bisa jawab. tapi harusnya adalah bukan buzzword. Untuk menambahkan komen dari Pak Kostub, yang saya tangkap itu harus bukan hanya buzzword saja, tapi mari sama-sama dengan prinsip kekeluargaan tadi ya yang disebutkan, intinya begitu. Ini ada pertanyaan lagi dari Pak Muhaimin nih dari Lampung ya. Terima kasih, ini 2 kali bertanya. Pertanyaannya, go green means environmental sustainability. How possible that the approach should be combined with economic industry view of point?
I believe we just spoke about this part.
Yeah, right. I believe so.
But just to answer for Mohammed, this is a valid question. To have a sustainable thing, unless it is coming from the industry side and that requisite awareness is there, it won't be sustainable. So it has to be seen from a social aspect and also from an industry aspect to make it sustainable and have a larger benefit or a win-win situation for every one of us.
Ya, thank you Pak Kostub. Terima kasih Pak Muhammad pertanyaannya. Jadi saya rasa tadi juga sudah kita bahas, dan sebenarnya kalau menurut pendapat saya opininya itu adalah kembali ke mari kita sama-sama bertransformasi ya. Sekarang kita nggak tahu sebenarnya yang tepatnya itu seperti apa. Seperti Pak Kostub bilang tidak ada silver bullet ya. Tapi yang jelas ya ternyata go green khusus transportasi yang kontribusinya adalah 14%, itu jawabannya bukanlah sekedar semua menjadi elektrik. Tidak sesederhana dan semudah itu. Kita harus pikirkan, dan intinya yang kita tuh ya artinya ya semuanya gitu ya. Baik dari sektor konsumen, sektor industri, dan segala macam cari solusi bersama. Ya. Oh, ini ada Bu Dami katanya join, dan Bu Dami mau bicara, silahkan.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Kostub. Sorry, sorry that I just joined. I have a meeting. I just want to have one short question which interests me about this philosophy that you are using. This philosophy, is it actually being embraced by the whole country, or is it you in your program on what the word is, Pak Eka? That word?
Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam.
That's it. So is this something that is actually being embraced by the whole project, or is it just you specifically using this also as a integration of the local philosophy with climate change or whatever? Yeah, could you explain?
Sure. Thank you for the question, Budamayanti. Pleasure to have that. See, this philosophy has been there since very, very long. It dates back to almost the first Veda, which was formed as Rig Veda and prevalent. A few years back, our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, in one of the UN speech, had proposed this as an underlying philosophy to solve this problem as a collective problem, because one action at one end is not going to solve the entire problem. So it has to be looked in the totality, and it has to be protected as one family. Unless we have that kind of an approach, we won't be able to go anywhere. Okay, we may have one solution which is benefiting a certain region, but that may not be true for another region and may create a bigger impact. So basically, the balance has to be struck about what we are proposing and what we are creating and what is the impact of that creation, and accordingly have that kind of an IPB, so that we continue to sustain and have a greener future.
Okay. Wow, that's very powerful. Thank you. Wish you all the success.
Thank you. Wish you the same. Selamat pagi.
Thank you.
Oke, terima kasih Bu Dami. Ya, waktunya sudah habis ya, kebetulan 11 sampai 11.30 kita udah lebih 1 menit. Dan Pak Usin berhalangan, dan saya seizin Bu Dami akan menutup TTT hari ini. Ya, semoga TTT hari ini membawa minimal lah mengetuk hati semuanya untuk merenung kembali ya. Oke, kita go green, tapi go green-nya kayak gimana ya? Tolong dipikir lebih dalam ya. Tidak semudah itu, dan harus dipikirkan mendalam karena untuk masa depan kita semua. Semua dalam arti yang Pak Kosto bilang adalah ya dunia ini adalah keluarga. Kurang lebih itu adalah takeaway saya hari ini. Dan terima kasih atas kedatangannya semua. Semoga bermanfaat. Selamat pagi. Thank you. Pak Kostu. Stay safe and healthy, everybody.
Thank you, Pak Kostu.
Thank you,
Thank
Pak
you.
Kostu.
Thank you. Terima kasih. Terima kasih Maniak.
Hadir. Ani, makasih Ani.
Selamat selalu.
Sama-sama Ibu.
Bu Ani. Sehat Bu Ani.
Salam sehat. Alhamdulillah.
Iya,
Ada
Bu
kawan
Dani.
saya ada. Apa kabar ada?
Oke, saya izin keluar, masih lanjut
saya juga
lagi.
izin. Silakan
Salam
Pak.
sehat Pak Dirus.
Ya.
Thank you, terima kasih.
Pak Eka.
Terima kasih.
Dadah, ada Mbak Galuh, izin live.
Iya, Mbak Ani, makasih Mbak Ani.